This is part 2 of my introduction series, and today we're going to be having a look at some corals that I've got in the tank. We're probably not going to have time to cover every single coral that I've got. I've been collecting them for the last 12 months, and I brought a few across with me from my old tank. You know, I'm pretty happy with how it's all looking. In fact, I think it looks fantastic for a 12-month-old tank. I'm very, very happy. So I hope you enjoy looking at it as much as I enjoy collecting and growing these corals out. Most of them were frags, or a fraction of the size of what they are in my tank, so that's something I'm very proud of. It's my first ever attempt at keeping SPS, and so far I've only lost one, and that was due to a dosing pump failure. So fingers crossed I continue with the same level of success that I believe that this one's having. I kind of put the success that I'm having down to, I've got good import-export of nutrients. So I'm using a refugium, a DIY setup that I made, and it's doing a good job. In fact, I've been dosing nitrate because I just can't physically get any detection. I've also gone from just having 3 or 4 fish, which I was quite happy with, but I've added a lot of antheas and different fish just so I can try and get a nitrate reading in there. I'm now starting to see some nitrates, and my colours have definitely improved, and they're colouring up quite well. So we'll take a look at that. In the background you can just see a handful of my sort of full tank shots. I find it very difficult to get a good shot because of the dimensions of it. It's very long and narrow. This is as good as I can get. I'm terrible at photography, so bear with me, and I'm sure over the next year or so while I'm updating the reef tank I'll get better at it. We'll take a look at one of my favourite corals first, which is the Elegance. So I've had this blue tip Elegance for roughly 2 years now. I had it in my old tank. It was the first one I brought across. It was quite small when I got it, about 10 centimetres, and then I put it in here. I got the flow just right, which it likes the medium to low flow. You can see it just slightly swaying in the current. And it likes quite low par. This is around 120 par that it's running at, and it's heavily swayed towards the blue spectrum. It's probably 16k I run the lights at, but they do change throughout the day depending on what time it is, because I like to view the corals in a different colour than I like to record in, and I just tend to leave the settings. So I know that I'm recording at 6 p.m. every night, or when I record, the time frame is between 6 and 8. So this is one of 2 Elegance corals that I've got. The next one is a beautiful orange tip. So this is one of my favourite corals. It's the orange Elegance. I've had this guy for about 3 or 4 months. Again, it does really well with low to medium flow. As you can see, it's not moving too forcefully. It's just got a nice sway. You can feed this frozen meaty mysis shrimp or brine shrimp. I tend to stick to mysis. It openly takes them. I'll just use a turkey baster to feed it, and you'll see that if you stand and watch it for long enough, the tentacles will grab onto the meat and they'll put it into its mouth, and it's really interesting to watch as well. The kids love watching it. This particular piece has a really nice vibrant orange, and you know, this video really doesn't do it any justice at all. It's a really nice and quite an easy to keep coral. I see a lot of people say, oh, it's very difficult to keep them, but I've never lost an Elegance. I've lost lots of corals in my time, but I've never lost an Elegance. So maybe it's specific types. I heard Indonesian Elegance are quite hard to keep, but obviously I'm in Australia, so I get Australian ones. So let's move on to the next one. So on the left hand side you can see my Stylophora. It's toxic green, really nice and bright, especially when my lights are on the bluer side. I bought this as a frag from Oceanarium. They specialise in aquaculture, and you know, I think we should all try and buy as much aquaculture as possible. We don't really want to be damaging the reefs too much, so it's more sustainable. Everyone knows the benefits of it, so if you can, aquaculture is the way to go. Although it does get a little bit frustrating, you know, having to wait so long to grow out these small frags into big colonies. I think it's worth it in the end. It also gives me a sense of accomplishment as well. And on the right hand side you can see a pink bird's nest with green tips. Again, that was aquacultured, and I'm pleased to say that they're both doing pretty well. I've just recovered from an alk overdose, so the colours aren't quite there as they were before, but they're definitely recovering, so I shouldn't have any issues getting the colours back. This is a 24 carat Australian Gold Tourch. When I bought this, it was really small. I actually never saw it extend. It cost me $50, and I just got it cheap because the shop that was selling it, I think they realised that it was going to die in their tank. So I grabbed it, put it in here, and I mean, again, the colours don't do it justice. It is super bright. I've never seen a coral, look as golden as this thing does. I can't wait for it to get bigger so I can frag it and put them in my other tank. But it's a very, very nice piece. Definitely glad I got that one. So behind that you can see a really vibrant pink morph. Well, it's a red pink morph. The colour that you're seeing on camera is about what it looks like in the tank, so it really is quite rich in colour. And finally, in the back left hand corner we have a nice green morph as well, that's just split into two. For some reason mushrooms don't do too well in my system. I imagine it's because I really struggle to get a good reading of nitrate and phosphate. Some things that don't struggle at all are these torches that you can see. In fact, when I got these two, they didn't really have too much colour for a good year back in my cade, and then I put them in, I moved them over to this tank, and slowly but surely they've sort of got used to the slightly higher flow than what I'd normally give them, and in fact they've got really quite colourful. The green stem and purple tip is probably the pick of the bunch. It used to have much shorter tentacles as well, kind of like the one on the right, the purple base and green tip, but over time the tentacles have got much longer. So that's something interesting to note. I always thought they sort of stayed the same and just the head propagated and multiplied, but yeah, they get much longer as well. On the left of that you can see a chalice. That started off being more purple, and it seems to have gone more aqua colour, and the yellow eyes or mouths in the middle have got more prominent as well since I added the T5 lights, actually, because my tank now has a mixture of Aqualumination Hydra 26, it has two of them, and then I DIY'd 4 ATI bulb T5 fixture on it. So I run 2 Coral Plus, 1 Fiji Pink and 1 Actinic. So they're the 4 supplements to the LEDs, because the LEDs are the main type of lighting on this tank. And again, I added that in, and everything coloured up pretty well, actually, apart from, if you can see right at the back, we've got a bird's nest, and it's pink and yellow tipped. That one bleached. I had that at the top of the tank when I added the T5s. It bleached a little bit, but now again it's just starting to recover, so I'm happy about that one. And if you look at this purple coral in the back right hand corner, you can just about make out it's a purple plating Monti. So I got that as a frag again, and it's growing quite well. It wasn't getting much light before, but I've done a bit of a rescape, and it's opened up to a bit more light, so there's some good growth on it now. I'm hoping that should be a decent sized colony in about 6 to 12 months. The small torch, actually, that you can see there was a tiny 2 centimeter frag that I bought online, and that's grown out to be about 3 or 4 heads now, but it's probably taken about 6 to 12 months. I got that as one of the first corals in the first batches of order, so it'd be about 9 months old. These guys really enjoy low to moderate flow, and the same for par, actually. The one on the right, the purple base and green tip, is getting about 120 par, whereas the one next to it is getting roughly 100 par. The last time I checked, that's when T5s and the LEDs are on. My settings slowly ramp up and then ramp down throughout the day. And the The chalice, I think, is probably getting slightly too much light because it's definitely had a colour shift. I'm not unhappy with the colours. I actually prefer the colour it's turned into, but it was more blue when I first got it. And I've read that they can vary greatly on light that they need. In fact, I've taken 2 corals out of here. I had a bubblegum chalice and a red blood chalice, and I've had to take them out and put them in my nano just because I couldn't meet their light requirements. They needed, a very small amount of light compared to what this tank gets. And since I've put them in they basically bleached out completely. And since I put them in my nano, I've had no issues whatsoever. The colours come straight back and they're starting to grow again. So it's good having that second tank there with completely different parameters, so I don't lose any corals if for whatever reason they're not doing great in this tank. I've got a low flow, low light softy tank which I can just chuck them in there. This is an Aussie gold hammer, and this video just doesn't do any justice whatsoever. This is possibly the best coral I've ever seen in person. I went to my local fish store to salt or suppliers. I had no intentions of spending any money there whatsoever, but then I spotted this, and although it's by far the most expensive coral in my system, it's worth every penny. I've never ever come across one this brightly coloured, and I'm glad I picked it up. I was very close not to, but just because it is a lot more expensive than I'm used to paying for corals. But sometimes these opportunities come, and I definitely took this one, and I'm glad I did. You can probably see a bit of a theme going along here. I really do love hammers and the entire Euphyllia family. Not only are they really colourful, but they add an amazing movement. And if you get the branching variety, you can frag them and propagate them and sell them to fund the hobby. We all know this hobby takes a lot of time and also a lot of money. So if you can frag and sell them or trade corals and keep the hobby alive, then I think that's a good way to go. So you'll see that I've got a lot of these different Euphyllia family, and they just seem to do well in my tank. Anything that does well in your tank, I think it's smart to buy things that are going to do well. It's all well and good trying to challenge yourself to keep these super hard to keep corals, and I've done it before. I've done it with fish as well. I've tried multiple times to keep a copper band butterfly just because I really like them, and they're one of my favourite fish, but I just can't do it. And it comes to a point where I just think, maybe they are better off left in the ocean. Ultimately, at this point in my sort of reefian life or hobby, I decided that I'm happy to spend extra cash on really nice corals that I know I've got a high chance of doing really well in my tank. So I'm happy to spend a bit of money on stuff like Euphyllia. Not so much SPS because it's still very new to me. I've only been growing SPS for 6 months now. It's been going okay so far, but they are, every time there's a slight issue with my tank, they are the first to react. They start to pale. Luckily enough, I've been able to catch it and bring it back. They're actually very good at indicator if something's not right. So it's always good to have just one in there, just as a yellow canary to say if the tank's doing well, or if there's a water parameter issue, and then you need to get all your test kits out and find out where that issue is. So they're quite useful for that. And these 2 SPS have been doing really well. Again, these were bought from just a small frag. The Acro Purple on the left was just a tiny little stick, about 2 centimeters, and in 6 months it's grown to that, and it's got some really nice tips on the growth. On the right, you can see the Monti, which needs to be moved. I don't know if you can see that in the middle, but there's some cyano there because they were stinging each other. So I'm gonna rejig the aquascape and try and give everything a bit more room now. They grew faster than I expected. In fact, I thought I'd probably kill them because I'd never grown SPS before when I placed it there. So they're gonna get moved around. The next thing that we've got is my Zoa garden. So you can see on the left we have a small colony of toxic pallies. On the right hand side I've got an LA Laker frag plug. So that's grown from a single head, which I I spent $150 on a head of this because they were just so rare in Australia, and I really like the look of it, like a yellowy purple colour. I'm not sure of the Zoa in the top right hand corner, the pink and pale looking one. If anyone knows what that is, let me know in the comments below. And then we've got the Monti. Again, we have some more Zoas here. To be honest, I'm probably going to start removing the Zoas from this tank and then moving it into my softy tank, my nano, just because they're starting to take over. I really didn't expect them to grow that fast, and yeah, they're starting to grow on top of other corals and things. So one of the corals that I wish I never added in, or I added to a separate island just so I can control the growth rate. This is a beautiful Lobo. It's super vibrant orange and green. Unfortunately give it too much light, and this is when I try to run some GFO. I run the smallest amount of GFO, like I think it was about a 1/16 of what I was supposed to run, and it's still, unfortunately, brought my nutrients down too much, and the phosphate went from 0.2 to 0 in about a week, and that, along with moving the coral, it made it bleach. Next thing I've got is this really bright and vibrant Montipora. This I got from another reefer. I found them online. They were selling some frags, so I jumped at the opportunity to get this. Again, I get this Blasto from another reefer, and it was just a small frag, and it's been growing slowly but steadily in my tank for the last year and a bit. So yeah, I really like the look of it. It's only a small piece still, but it's getting good growth, so I'm sure it'll be bigger. So that just about wraps this video up. I'll leave you with a full tank shot of my main display. If you like the video, please hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.